Hello, this is Shmuel Moshe, and you are listening to the Weekly Parashahcast Season 2, the show where I read the Tanakh and provide my own interpretations of what I think it all means. This week's episode lands during the weekly portion for Parashat Shemot, the beginning of Exodus in the Torah readings, and we're going to be jumping right in with a continuation of Shoftim, the book of Judges, with chapters 10 through 12. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in from here. We're continuing after the story of Abimelech and his uprising. Now let's go ahead and learn about what comes next. You can follow along on English on Chabad.org. This week's Torah portion, as a reminder, falls during the 18th of Tevet, January 18th, 2025, 5785 in the Hebrew calendar. Once again, I remind everybody I'm not a professional Torah scholar, just somebody who wanted to study the Tanakh. Let's go ahead and jump on in. Shoftim chapter 10, verse 1. And after Abimelech there arose to save Israel Tola the son of Puah, the son of Dodo, a man of Issachar, and he dwelt in Shamir in the mountain of Ephraim. And he judged Israel 23 years, and he died, and he was buried in Shamir. And after him rose Yair the Gileadite, and he judged Israel 22 years. And he had 30 sons that rode on 30 white colts, and they had 30 cities. They called them the villages of Yair until this day, which are in the land of Gilead. And after Yair died, he was buried in Kamon. And the children of Israel continued to do that which displeased the Lord. And they served the Baalim and the Ashtaroth and the gods of Aram and the gods of Zidon and the gods of Moab and the gods of the children of Ammon and the gods of the Philistines. And they forsook the Lord and did not serve him. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he delivered them over into the hand of the Philistines and into the hand of the children of Ammon. And they crushed and broke the children of Israel that year. For 18 years, all the children of Israel that were beyond the Jordan in the land of the Amorites, which is in Gilead. And the children of Ammon crossed the Jordan to fight also against Judah, and against Benjamin, and against the house of Ephraim, and Israel was greatly distressed. And the children of Israel cried to the Lord, saying, We have sinned against you, for we have forsaken our God, and have served the Baalim. And the Lord said to the children of Israel, Did I not save you from the Egyptians, and from the Amorites, from the children of Ammon, and from the Philistines? The Zidonians and Amalek and Maon oppressed you, and you cried to me, and I saved you from their hand. And you have forsaken me, and have served other gods, therefore I will not continue to save you. Go and cry to the gods which you have chosen, let them save you in the time of your distress. And the children of Israel said to the Lord, We have sinned. Do you to us whatsoever pleases you, only deliver us now this day. And they removed the strange gods from among them, and they served the Lord, and his soul was grieved by the toil of Israel. And the children of Ammon were gathered, and they encamped in Gilead, and the children of Israel assembled and encamped in Mizpah. And the children of the princes of Gilead said each to his friend, Whosoever shall be the man that will begin to fight against the children of Ammon, he shall be the head over all the inhabitants of Gilead. End of chapter 10. So a quick summary following the episodes of Avimelech. There came another judge, Tola, son of Puah, son of Dodo, from Issachar, and he was there for 23 years as the judge, and then after he died, he was buried in Shamir. After that, Yair the Gileadite, he also judged for 22 years. He had 30 sons. It says they rode on white horses, and they had 30 cities. So they had a whole great empire, basically, of the children of Yair. After he died, he's buried in Kamon, and they continue to sin. So just as was foretold, the children of Israel continue to sin against their own God by worshiping other gods, worshiping the local gods. They have failed to stay faithful. So God says, okay, you're on your own, and they get turned over to the hands of the Philistines, and it starts on one side of the Jordan and carries over into the other, and they're all crying out, Oh, God, help us! And he says, Me? You want my help? You've been worshiping those other gods instead of me. Ask them for help. And they say, Oh, we were wrong. Please, do whatever you want to us, but save us. We surrender to you. Just save us. And so they get rid of all the idols, and then they turn to the Lord, and now he hears their plea, and the people are now gathered together. They're worried about the Ammonites who are all around them encamped in Gilead, and they say, Whoever can fight against the children of Ammon, we'll make him the head over all of Gilead. Thus concludes chapter 10's recap. Fairly straightforward. They screwed around and they found out. Now into chapter 11 of Shoftim, verse 1. Now Jephtah the Gileadite was a mighty man of valor, and he was the son of a woman harlot. And Gilead begot Jephtah. And Gilead's wife bore him sons. And his wife's sons grew up and drove Jephtah out. And they said to him, You shall not inherit our father's house, for you are the son of another woman. And Jephtah fled from his brothers, and he dwelt in the land of Tob. And idle men were gathered to Jephtah, and they went out with him. And it was after many days, and the children of Ammon made war with Israel. And it was when the children of Ammon fought with Israel, and the elders of Gilead went to take Jephtah from the land of Tob, and they said to Jephtah, Oh, come and become our chief, and we will fight with the children of Ammon. And Jephtah said to the elders of Gilead, Did you not hate me, and drive me from my father's house? So why have you come to me now when you are in distress? And the elders of Gilead said to Jephtah, Therefore we return to you now, and you shall go with us, and you will fight with the children of Ammon, and you shall become our head over all the inhabitants of Gilead. And Jephtah said to the elders of Gilead, If you bring me back to fight with the children of Ammon, and the Lord delivers them before me, I will become your head. And the elders of Gilead said to Jephtah, The Lord shall hear between us, if not according to your words, so will we do. And Jephtah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people appointed him a head and chief over them. And Jephtah spoke all his words before the Lord in Mizpah. And Jephtah sent messengers to the king of the children of Ammon, saying, What is between me and you, that you have come to me to fight in my land? And the king of the children of Ammon said to the messengers of Jephtah, Because Israel took away my land, when they came out of Egypt from Arnon, and up through the Jabbok, and up to the Jordan, and now restore them peacefully. And Jephtah continued and sent messengers to the king of the children of Ammon, and he said to him, So said Jephtah, Israel did not take the land of Moab and the land of the children of Ammon. Because when they came up from Egypt, and Israel went through the wilderness up to the Red Sea, and they came to Kadesh, and Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, Let me pass now through your land, and the king of Edom did not listen, and also to the king of Moab he sent, and he was unwilling, and Israel abode in Kadesh. And they went through the wilderness, and went around the land of Edom, and the land of Moab, and they came to the east of the land of Moab, and they encamped on the other side of the Arnon. And they did not come within the border of Moab, for the Arnon was the border of Moab. And Israel sent messengers to Sihon, the king of the Amorites, the king of Heshbon, and Israel said to him, Please let us pass through your land up to my place. And Sihon did not trust Israel to pass through his border, and Sihon gathered all his people, and they encamped in Yahaz and fought with Israel. And the Lord, the God of Israel, delivered Sihon and all his people into the hand of Israel, and they struck them. And Israel possessed all the land of the Amorites, the inhabitants of that land. And they possessed all the borders of the Amorites, from the Arnon up to the Jabbok, and from the wilderness up to the Jordan. And now the Lord, the God of Israel, has driven out the Amorites from before his people Israel. And you want to possess it? Is it not that which Chemosh, your God, gives you to possess, that you may possess? And all that which the Lord our God has driven out from before us, that we shall possess? And now, are you any better than Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever strive with Israel, or did he ever fight against them? When Israel dwelt in Heshbon and its towns, and in Aroer and its towns, and in all the cities that are along Arnon, 300 years, why did you not recover them at that time? And I have not sinned against you, and you do wrong with me by fighting against me. May the Lord the judge decide this day between the children of Israel and the children of Ammon. And the king of the children of Ammon did not listen to the words of Jephtah, which he had sent him. And a spirit of the Lord was upon Jephtah, and he passed over Gilead and Manasseh, and he passed over Mizpeh of Gilead, and from Mizpeh of Gilead he passed over to the children of Ammon. And Jephtah vowed a vow to the Lord, and said, If you will indeed deliver the children of Ammon into my hand, and it will be whatever comes forth, that shall come forth from the doors of my house towards me, when I return in peace from the children of Ammon, shall be to the Lord, and I will offer him up for a burnt offering. And Jephtah passed over the children of Ammon to fight against them, and the Lord delivered them into his hand. And he struck them from Aroer until you come to Minit, 20 cities, and up to Abel Cheramim, a very great slaughter. And the children of Ammon were subdued before the children of Israel. And Jephtah came to Mizpah to his house, and behold, his daughter was coming out towards him with timbrels and with dances, and she was an only child. He had from her neither a son nor a daughter. And it was when he saw her that he rent his clothes and said, Alas, my daughter, you have made me fall, and you have become one of those that trouble me. And I have opened my mouth to the Lord, and I cannot go back. And she said to him, My father, you have opened your mouth to the Lord. Do to me according to that which has issued from your mouth, since the Lord has done for you vengeance from your enemies, from the children of Ammon. And she said to her father, Let this thing be done for me. Refrain from me 2 months, and I shall go and wail upon the mountains, and I shall cry over my virginity, I and my companions. And he said, Go. And he sent her away 2 months, and she went with her companions, and she cried over her virginity upon the mountains. And it was at the end of 2 months that she returned to her father, and he did to her his vow which he had vowed. And she had not known any man, and it was a statute in Israel. From year to year the daughters of Israel went to lament the daughter of Jephtah the Gileadite 4 days in a year. End of chapter 11. So here we have a story of diplomacy, of sacrifice, of victory, and of defeat. Let's begin with our recap for chapter 11. So we hear about a man named Jephtah. He is a Gileadite, so he's born of the line of Gilead, and he is, it says, a mighty man of valor, son of a woman harlot. And so he was born unto Gilead. Now, Gilead had other sons. His wife had children. So these are all his legitimate children, whereas Jephtah is his illegitimate son, I suppose. If it says his mother was a harlot, then that's just how it goes. He was born... I don't know if this makes him a mamzer. I don't know for sure. I don't know the meaning of a mamzer, at least not in too much detail in the sense of a forbidden relationship. But it is said that, don't have harlot, or don't have relations with harlots, or don't make the daughters of Israel harlots. But it also doesn't specify if this woman is a harlot of Israel or of a foreign people. Either way, he is born to a harlot, whereas his other siblings, his half-siblings, are all born to the formal husband and wife union of his father. So they say to him, You are not born of our mother, get out. So they run him out of town. They totally disown their brother, and they chase him away. And it says that he flees from his brothers, and it says idle men were gathered to him, and they went out with him. So it seems like he already had the qualities of a great leader. It says idle men. So these are guys who didn't have... they didn't have a job, they didn't have a land, they didn't have a purpose in life. They were idle. They were sitting there kind of waiting for a calling, and they gather around him, and they all go together. And so it says that after some time, the war with Ammon begins. The Israelites are attacked by the people of Ammon. And now these people of Gilead, it's clear that they're being conquered, right? Based on the previous chapter, it says that Ammon was taking over and beating them. And so the elders, they go and they go to the land of Tob because they want to take Jephtah, who is this great guy, apparently, a man of valor who was run off by his own brothers. But now they need him, so they're going to go and ask for him. And he says, Hey, come be our chief. We will fight with the children of Ammon. And he says to them, Did you not hate me and drive me from my father's house? Why do you come to me now when you are in distress? And it's very interesting because this is the same sort of discourse that God has when they say, Oh, God, help us. He says, Did you not turn to other gods? Why don't you have them help you? So it's very interesting. The biggest thing I take away from here is my disgust, my utter visceral disgust for the children of Israel, specifically of this people of Gilead, who had the nerve to throw him out and then now beg him for help. Disgusting. Disgusting. I don't usually get so judgmental during this, but I find this absolutely deplorable, shameful, pathetic. Anyway, so hateful vitriol aside, he agrees to do it under the condition of, if this is so, that the Lord will deliver them before me, then I will be your head guy. I'll do it. So, sure enough, this is what happens, and he goes back with them, and he begins with diplomacy. So first he spreads the word around, and he makes it clear what he's going to do, and then he begins to try with diplomacy. So rather than go straight to battle, he tries to talk things over. And he says, King of Ammon, what is the quarrel that we have? Why have you come to fight me in my land? And he responds, because the Israelites took my land. When they came out of Egypt, they stole what was mine. I'm taking it back. Give it back peacefully and there'll be no problem. And so now he says, King of Ammon, there seems to be a bit of a misunderstanding. You see, when the Israelites were leaving Egypt, that's not what happened. They actually went around your territories, all the territories of Moab and all this and that, and they even asked the Edomites and the Moabites, they said, hey, can we please pass through in peace? And they were told, no, we don't trust you. And even worse than that, not only did they not let them pass, these kings, king of the Amorites, right? So King Sihon, king of Heshbon, he says, I'm not going to let them pass, but not only that, I'm going to go to war with these guys. So not only did they say no to passing through, they also declared war on them. And during this time, Sihon and his cohorts were defeated, and all that was theirs was delivered into the hands of Israel. So it's interesting. Like, this is basically a case of the Israelites are marching through. They say, hey, let us pass peacefully. And the response is, no, we're not going to let you do that. We're going to go to war with you. And then in doing so, they lose territory because they declared war on the Israelites. History has a tendency to repeat itself. But nevertheless, so he says, this entire situation is because of what happened there. Now, I have two questions for you. My first question is, why are we worried about this when the land that you are in, your God is called Chemosh, right? That's the God that you worship. And then we have our God, right? And so is it not the will of your God that the land that you currently have is yours and the land that we currently have is ours? Otherwise, your God would never have lost it to our God, or the Israelites would never have taken it in any condition. If it was for your God to declare that this land was yours, why did you ever lose possession of it in the first place, right? So clearly the current borders are what is fair. We never crossed over your borders. But my second question, which is I think the better question of the two, it's been 300 years since all that happened. So why are you doing this now? What is the reason that 300 years later, now you're saying, we need to reclaim it? This is like Mussolini saying, we need to reclaim Africa for the Roman Empire. Right? Like, what? What have you been doing all this time? What have you been waiting for? Why now? So in any case, he says, listen, I have not sinned against you. You do wrong by fighting against me. May God judge between us. And basically, the king, he doesn't listen. He doesn't listen at all. The Amorite king says, no, not interested. I'm going to war. And so it says, a spirit of the Lord was upon Jephtah, and he passed over Gilead and Manasseh, and he passed over Mizpeh of Gilead, and from Mizpeh of Gilead he passed over to the children of Ammon. And so as he's going to war, he says, if you will indeed deliver the children of Ammon into my hand, it will be whatever comes forth that shall come forth from the doors of my house towards me when I return in peace from the children of Ammon shall be to the Lord, and I will offer up for him a burnt offering. Offer him up for a burnt offering. There we go. So he's saying, if I'm successful in this battle, I will give up the first thing that comes out of my front door as a burnt offering to God, is what he is saying in this vow. Now, I want to draw attention to something that is very, very critically important, because in the past, I have actually had very interesting discussions with people who claim that the Israelite people, the Jews, are pro-child sacrifice. Now, obviously, if you follow the commandments, which clearly say, do not pass your child through a fire, right? So child sacrifice is expressly forbidden, and it all begins with the binding of Isaac, where he's going to be sacrificed, and God says, no, don't do that. We're not actually doing that. And so it is forbidden. It is forbidden to sacrifice a child, okay? That being said, I was brought up this story, which is the first time I ever found out about it. He said to me, well, if the Jews don't do child sacrifice, then explain this. And there is an important explanation here. So I want to draw attention to the end of the Torah regarding vows made to the Lord. It says very expressly, if you make a vow to God, you cannot revoke it. Therefore, it's better to just not make vows in general, right? That is what it says in the Torah. So this is a case of Jephtah is making a vow. Now, I have sat on this one for a while, ever since I had that conversation, so I'm really glad to finally be covering this in an episode. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump ahead. He was successful. He defeated the Ammonites, or the Amorites. Ammon is conquered and crushed. They liberate the people. Wonderful. He goes home, and who greets him at his door? It's his daughter, his only child. And it says that he rent his clothing. Alas, my daughter, you have made me fall, and you have become one of those that trouble me. I have opened my mouth to the Lord, and I cannot go back. So in other words, by saying this, she realizes my father made a vow. He must honor it no matter what. That is the way of our people. Now, unfortunately, this is the end of his bloodline. This girl had no children. It's very sad. She had no child, no son, no daughter, so this is his only child, and now he must kill her. They accept this must be done, not because God asked for this. God did not ask for this. It is because he vowed it. Now, ultimately, she asks, please let me go and have 2 months to cry about this in the wilderness with my friends and lament that I will never have a family and that I will never have children, and then I'll come back and you can put me to death. And they agree to it. She leaves, and then she comes back. Her father puts her to death as a burnt offering, and then she died a virgin. And so it says, the daughters of Israel went to lament the daughter of Jephtah the Gileadite 4 days and a year. So such was her sacrifice, and such was the sacrifice of this family. Now, again, I want to draw attention to there are a couple problems here. It says that he was a man of valor, right? So he was already a great guy. But when they come to him asking for aid, he's like, why are you coming to me? I'm not, you threw me out. What do you want me for? And they basically say, no, we want you anyway. So he goes and does it. And he does all this stuff on behalf. But here's the problem. It seems that he had some doubts. Because if he was truly acting on behalf of God in such a way, then there would be no question that he's going to win. So why does he offer up this offering the way he does? What is the reason for this? Why did he make this vow unnecessarily? I'm not entirely sure. Because frankly, if he was the chosen judge, it wasn't necessary, but he did it. I have ultimately come to 2 conclusions here. One, I said before, you must honor the vow, and this is how severe it goes. A vow made cannot be broken. And it says, he falls down and he says, he says, you have made me fall, and you have become one of those that trouble me. So, in other words, you've made me fall, as in you've made me fall from grace. You've made me fall from purity. Right, because I now must commit this horrible sin of child sacrifice. I am now forced to do this, and you've become one of those that troubles me. So, in other words, you become like a burden unto me because of this. Now, I want to remind the language here of you become one who troubles me. The term trouble in this translation, if it is the same, it's used by Jacob, Israel, when his sons attack the men of Shechem. Right, which is kind of funny. Recently, we were talking about Shechem. Well, here we are again now in the next generation talking about his sons troubled him when they killed those people and made all that uproar. And now here Jephtah is troubled because he must now sacrifice his daughter, and he obviously doesn't want to do that. So it's a terrible situation all around. But the conclusion I came to from the very first, all the way back in the beginning, was that the reason this horrible thing befell our good man Jephtah is because of his father's actions. He was the son of a harlot, which means that he was born under unacceptable conditions, right? So this is perhaps the reason for this. Now, I don't know because I'm not the big man upstairs. But the conclusion I reached is that this had nothing to do with Jephtah making that vow. The vow was a mistake because he ended up having to sacrifice his child. Why did this curse befall his bloodline? It says about the God of Israel that good deeds he rewards for 1,000 generations, but bad deeds he remembers to the 3rd or 4th generation. So if Jephtah's father is the first generation, right? He is the second generation. His daughter is the third generation. Or he's the first generation, his daughter's the second generation. There will be no third generation. So this is sort of like a fulfilled promise. Now, the thing I hate about this most is he leads over these people because they came to him in a need of help, and it cost him everything. It destroyed him. So this really is like one of the hardest stories for me, that this great hero who did not choose how he was born suffers such a tremendous loss. So nevertheless, we get into the next chapter, chapter 12, our final chapter for today. Let's begin. Chapter 12 of Shoftim, the book of Judges, verse 1. And the men of Ephraim were gathered and passed to the north, and they said to Jephtah, Why did you pass to fight against the children of Ammon? And you did not call us to go with you. Your house we will burn upon you with fire. And Jephtah said to them, I and my people were at great strife with the children of Ammon, and I called you, and you did not save me from their hand. And I saw that you did not save me, and I took my life into my hands, and passed over to the children of Ammon, and the Lord delivered them into my hand. So why have you come up to me this day to fight against me? And Jephtah gathered all the men of Gilead, and fought with Ephraim. And the men of Gilead struck Ephraim, because the lowest of Ephraim said, Of what importance are you Gileadites in the midst of Ephraim and in the midst of Manasseh? And the Gileadites seized the fords of the Jordan that belonged to Ephraim. And it was that when any of the lowest of Ephraim said, Let me go over, and the men of Gilead said to him, Are you an Ephraimite? And he said, No. And then they said to him, Say now, Shibboleth. And he said, Sibboleth. And he was not prepared to pronounce it properly. And they grabbed him and slaughtered him at the fords of the Jordan. And there fell at the time of Ephraim 42,000. And Jephtah judged Israel 6 years, and Jephtah the Gileadite died, and he was buried in the cities of Gilead. And after him Ibzan of Bethlehem judged Israel, and he had 30 sons and 30 daughters he sent abroad, and 30 daughters he brought in for his sons from abroad, and he judged Israel 7 years. And Ibzan died, and he was buried in Bethlehem. And after him Elon the Zebulunite judged Israel, and he judged Israel 10 years. And Elon the Zebulunite died, and he was buried in Ayalon, in the land of Zebulun. And after him Abdon the son of Hillel, the Piratonite, judged Israel. And he had 40 sons and 30 sons that rode on 70 young donkeys, and he judged Israel 8 years. And Abdon the son of Hillel, the Piratonite, died, and he was buried in Piraton, in the land of Ephraim, in the mountain of the Amalekites. End of chapter 12. Alrighty, so here we have one last story about our good friend Jephtah and what goes on here. So the people of Ephraim, the children of Ephraim, now remember this is the other tribe of Joseph. There's Manasseh and Ephraim. So it says here that they were gathered, they passed to the north, and they said to Jephtah, Why did you pass? So in other words, when you went to go fight Ammon, why didn't you have us come with you? Why didn't you come to us? Now remember, I believe it was Gideon who had this same problem when they said, Why didn't you have us help you fight? So they want the glory, but also they want the spoils, right? So they're mad. And Gideon's response was, Well, you got the better deal. I just got the basic stuff. In this case, Jephtah says, I and my people were at great strife with the children of Ammon. So he's saying the Gileadites. When he says I and my people, he's referring to the Gileadites. And I called you, and you did not save me from their hand. Now, we have some context. How do we know this? The reason is clearly the situation was so bad that they turned to Jephtah all the way in Tob, who was like an outcast, the son of a harlot. He was chased out. So he was certainly not going to be the first choice the Gileadites would have turned to when they needed help. That means that they must have asked the other tribes of Israel first. Otherwise, why would they turn to this bastard child before them? So that's when he says, My people were at great strife with the children of Ammon. You did not save me from their hand. In other words, you didn't help when we needed you, so I didn't call you to come help us finish the job. And they said, Oh, really? Well, who is so important? What makes you so important, people of Gilead? You live in between us two tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh. Who are you compared to this whole thing? Like, you're not so important. And now, reminder, they're saying this to a guy to whom God delivered the enemy. So he's saying, like the Lord delivered them into my hand. Why have you come to me to fight me? Like, do you understand what you're doing? But they're like, who are you anyway? What makes you so special? So because of this, he's like, okay, all of Gilead gathers together and they fight with Ephraim and they strike them. They win. They win. And it says, because the lowest of them said, who are you? Right? Who makes you so? Who are you amongst us? Well, we just showed you who we are. Now you know who we are. And so now it says that they seized the fords of the Jordan that belonged to Ephraim, right? So now if they wanted to cross, the people of Ephraim would have to ask, hey, let me pass over. And they'd say, are you from Ephraim? Because basically, we're not going to let you do that if you're from Ephraim, because those guys, we're going to punish them forever because of what they did and their attitude. So they would say, are you from Ephraim? And the guy would go, no. Oh, really? Then pronounce this word. And if he was not from Ephraim, he would say Shibolet. But he would respond Sibolet. So instead of she, he would say si. And so this one little, this for modern day comparison, this is like listening to Ashkenazic versus Sephardic Hebrew, right? You listen to the two, they say like Baruch Atah versus Baruch Asah, right? That's the difference. So instead of she, he said si. So he says, go ahead and pronounce the word Shibolet. And he would say Sibolet. And that would be how they know, you're one of those guys, busted. And then they would kill him. So apparently 42,000 people of Ephraim were slaughtered for these sorts of things, which is pretty wild. But hey, maybe next time, mind your manners. So after this, we hear about several others. So it's sad, it talks about his 6 years of judging, and then he dies, and he's buried in Gilead. So he's returned to his people. He gets appointed the head. So, I mean, he's obviously been restored to honor. Now, beyond that, we then hear about the other judges, Ibzan of Bethlehem. He's got 30 sons and 30 daughters that he sends across to marry foreigners, and he takes 30 foreigner women to marry his sons. And he judges Israel 7 years. Then he dies and is buried in Bethlehem. Elon the Zebulunite judges, and he is buried in Ayalon. Nothing particularly significant about him beyond he was just 10 years there, and he was on Zebulun. Then after that, Abdon, son of Hillel, Piratonite, he has 40 sons and 30 sons. So he has 40 sons and 30 grandsons riding on 70 donkeys. So he's got 70 young men riding around on donkeys, and he's judging Israel for 8 years. And when he dies, he's buried in Piraton in the land of Ephraim in the mountain of the Amalekites. So there we have the end of this chapter and today's episode. The biggest read, of course, is Jephtah and the Gileadites. I think the most significant story, and really, I think it's a recurring lesson in how ungrateful Bnei Israel has, the stiff-necked people, as they say, right? So here we see it. God's like, what are you doing? You're worshiping other gods. What are you asking me for help for? Don't you have them? Oh, please, have mercy. Oh, okay, since you got rid of the gods, I'll do it. Same thing with poor Jephtah. They come to him, and he's like, didn't you throw me out because of who I was born to? And now you're coming to me for help. Wow, sad. But nevertheless, he did it. He saved Israel, but at what cost? His bloodline, his daughter, the innocent virgin, had to be sacrificed, and he himself was ruined by this. I mean, really, the fact that he sacrificed his daughter, he's ruined. He's done for. And one can only wonder when this all took place, right? So it says that he only ruled them for 6 years. So I imagine this whole conflict with the Ephraimites happened for this reason, before he went home. And then that's why his judgment came to a conclusion. He probably had to be put to death after sacrificing her because that's illegal. So you've caused me to fall. In other words, I have to be put to death also. That's my takeaway. So the hero dies, but he is buried in Gilead, which I think is at least a nice thing to say that he was accepted amongst his kin. And, presumably his father's house did carry on through his brothers, but nevertheless, it's still a very sad story. So, until next time, this has been Shmuel Moshe with the Weekly Parashahcast Season 2. Hoping you enjoyed today's episode. I definitely felt very fired up. Please tune in next time for the next chapters. We'll be doing 13 through 15 of the book of Shoftim. Until then, once again, this is Shmuel Moshe. Thank you for listening, and as always, I leave you with Baruch Hashem.